Mike, so you don't get any background noise for the office, and over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, my name is Khadija, and I'm from Unlocked. I'm the attraction manager in the recruitment team. And my job is to basically talk about the program and let people know about all of the exciting work that we do at Unlocked, and all of the opportunities that the program opens up. So for this session, I'm going to kind of focus on different aspects of the role and of the program. I've got quite a lot of videos that kind of show you a bit of an insight into what the role actually is from a participant's or ambassador's perspective. So hopefully you should be able to get a good understanding of what we do from them, because they have much more exciting stories to tell than I do. But if you do have any questions about the particular day-to-day experience, as Tim said, like just do put them in the chat, and then we can kind of get round to them at the end of the presentation. So first of all, I'm going to show you a video which summarizes the program. It's quite fast paced, and it kind of really excitingly shows you all of the opportunities that you get on the Unlocked program. And then I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail as well. Great. Okay. So that video just gives you a little bit of an insight into the Unlocked program. And now I'm going to talk you through some of the stats and information that you will have seen in that video. So our mission at Unlock Graduates is to reduce reoffending in the UK. And that is part of the reason of that is because almost half of adults in the UK will reoffend within a year of being released from prison. And we believe that prison officers play a really vital role in reducing that number, and kind of thinking about the financial cost of reoffending. At the moment, it costs the UK about £18 billion. And that's the cost of kind of like processing everyone who's been released from prison and then processing them again to be kind of brought back into prison. I've got a bit more information about that in a couple of slides' time, but just to kind of give you a picture of the financial story as well. So we offer a 2-year leadership development program where we train graduates to work as frontline prison officers, who we believe can lead change within the UK prison service, focusing in specifically on rehabilitation and policy change as well. So that's what a lot of our program kind of focuses on, and what you'll kind of notice as I speak about the program today. So as I mentioned, the cost of reoffending in the UK at the moment is about £18.1 billion. And you know, that's one of the kind of biggest issues around prisons today, people leaving and then coming back. So the total cost of reoffending is around detecting, sentencing, and then imprisoning people who have already been through the system. So it not only has a financial impact on the economy, but it also has an impact on the prisoners' lives and also the victims' lives as well as the kind of the family and support system of that prisoner. So there are multiple people and groups who are impacted by the impact of reoffending at the moment, and that is definitely something that we're trying to reduce as an organisation, and that's why the work of our participants is so important. And then just to give you a bit of context in terms of like who our participants come into contact with when they're working in prisons. So the prison population, as you probably would have guessed, includes some of the most vulnerable and challenging members of society. They're more likely to have spent time in care as a child, to have witnessed and experienced physical abuse, substance misuse, and also have mental health problems as well. And they're also less likely to have obtained kind of minimum standards of education or to have held down a job. So the role of a prison officer is to support prisoners to kind of reframe the way that they see their opportunities in life, and to hopefully through rehabilitating them make better choices that will help them with that. So again, yeah, I guess this kind of speaks to the education aspect of prisoners and the statistics around that. So nearly 2/3 of people entering the prison system have the literacy skills of an 11-year-old, which is obviously a lot higher than the general adult population. So just something to bear in mind in terms of how we kind of work with prisoners and how we seek to rehabilitate them based on that information. So the structure of the program is as follows. So you can see the slide here summarizes the structure. The outline of the 2-year program, I'll kind of run through some details around that now. It starts off with 6 weeks of intensive training at Leeds Trinity University, where our participants meet each other and the kind of teaching team for the first time. They join a really close-knit team of around 150 participants who are really mission aligned, and they kind of start that close-knit community where they develop invaluable skills as a prison officer, both in terms of the rehabilitation side, but also the safety side, and also knowledge about prisons as well. So that's when they kind of start their knowledge and their training. On the programme, our participants benefit from a fully funded master's degree, which is an MSc in Applied Custodial Leadership, which is also accredited by Leeds Trinity University. And they also get work placements that could be with some of the top corporate kind of employers in the UK that we partner with. So we currently work with top law firms like Clifford Chance, KPMG, and we also work with government bodies such as the Ministry of Justice as well. So there's loads of opportunities to use that experience on the landings in that work placement to develop your knowledge even further. And we're really kind of passionate about the fact that the skills that our participants learn on the landings are highly transferable to a wide range of sectors. And it's also kind of important to think about how far the message of rehabilitation and kind of reducing reoffending can reach when we think about the skills that our participants bring on to other roles that they do after the programme. We don't expect people to stay working in the prison system when they finish the programme, although it is encouraged, but a lot of our participants have gone on to do some really exciting things, and I'm going to share that with you today. But the main thing that we're mostly concerned about is kind of them using that experience on the landings to spread the mission elsewhere into loads of different areas of work, because a lot of people haven't been in prisons, so they don't know how to make the best change, but our participants and ambassadors have, so they can provide that that wealth of knowledge. So a lot of prison officers will say that no 2 days are the same, but this slide gives you a bit of a kind of skeleton idea of what a day might look like. But their day might look like kind of running educational initiatives and getting prisoners to work, to cell searches and spotting like power shifts within prisoners and their relationships. The role of the prison officer is to keep the prison running smoothly, and all of that plays a really important role in that role. So there's a lot of responsibility that our participants have. They'll need great communication skills from day one to make sure they're doing their role effectively. But we support you every step of the way. So a lot of the skills that we think make a great prison officer, we actually look for in our recruitment process, which I'm going to run through in a bit more detail shortly. But it does play into the kind of day-to-day work of the prison officer as well. So as part of Unlocked, we are able to provide funding as well for different initiatives that you want to kind of bring into your prison to help rehabilitate the prisoners that you're working with. So we're able to kind of fund those ideas that will impact your prison initially, but hopefully the system as a whole. So a couple of examples will be in this presentation, but just to kind of get you in the I guess the mindset of thinking about how that impact can be made. So one of our prison officers, did a socially distanced Eid celebration. They've kind of promoted prisoner-led TV channels, for example, and there's loads of other ways that you can make what might seem like quite a small difference to us in the community, but make a huge difference to the impact and the lives of prisoners day to day. So as I said, I'll be able to share a bit more information on that later as well. So we are really proudly a Times Top 100 employer. We are also able to offer a starting salary of up to £30,000, as well as the fully funded master's degree that I spoke to you about before, and as well as kind of mentorship and training that starts from day one of the programme. Our participants are really kind of excited by the fact that unlocks give them the freedom to run with their ideas on how they can improve things, as well as having the responsibility to lead large groups of prisoners and often groups of staff as well. So that kind of feeds into the whole kind of messaging that I spoke to you about earlier, about how the skills that you learn on the program in a variety of different spaces can impact, I guess, what you do after the program, whether you decide to stay in the prison service or you decide to go elsewhere. So what I'm going to do now is just share with you a couple of videos about the achievements that some of our participants and ambassadors have achieved whilst being on the program, and it will just give you a flavour of the diversity of the different projects that they put into place and the impact that they've had. So we'll start with Georgie first. So that's just something there that just shows you the impact that you can have. And I was speaking earlier about the different types of roles that you can go on to after kind of being on the program. So in this video, Mofe talks about how the skills he learned on the program really helped him in his current role. Hopefully it will play. Great. Okay. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of what people have gotten up to after the program. Next, I'm going to talk to you about COVID, which I feel like we're all kind of sick of talking about, but it's really important that we think about the impact that COVID has had on prisons, prisoners, and prison staff. So the last couple of years have been a real strain for prisoners, prison staff, and the prison service. There has never been a better time to kind of make an impact, especially with COVID, reducing the amount of I guess, time that the prisoners get to socialise, the number of staff members who are available to work. It impacted the number of showers prisoners could have per week based on staff members, kind of availability. Like it had impact on all areas of their day-to-day life. So I think it's really important to think about the impact that our participants and ambassadors have had throughout COVID, because essentially our participants and prison officers in general work every day to keep society safe, and help rehabilitate the prisoners in care, COVID or not. But with COVID, there was a lot of challenge around how to do that in a way that best considered, I guess, the circumstances that we were all in. And it's really important that the day-to-day relationships they had with prisoners, that they were monitored, because as if in any other time, there might be different changes in power dynamics, there might be different changes in relationships between prisoners, but especially during COVID, where they were having less time to socialize, less time out of their cell, though, getting to know prisoners and knowing kind of their challenges and things that might kind of be difficult for them was really important, so that they could make better choices and that prison officers could better support them during that time. So the next couple of videos I'm going to show you is how some of our participants and ambassadors were able to utilize their position as prison officers to make the lives of prisoners better despite the challenges that COVID brought through. So first we're going to hear from John. So yeah, that just shows you how John was able to keep engaging with the prisoners in his care. The next story is from Ziba, where she speaks more about the Eid celebrations and what inspired her to do a COVID-safe Eid celebration. Right. So yeah, that just shows you that one idea can turn into something a lot bigger and can have an impact for loads of different prisoners in a range of different ways. So just in case you're really curious to know how you can get involved with Unlocked, I'm going to run you through some information and some tips about the application process. Our applications close on the 18th of February, so quite soon, and I'll be able to share information about how you can apply towards the end, and I'll put some messages in the chat box as well so that you can follow them and kind of read a bit more on our website. But this slide just gives you a bit of a summary on the application journey that our applicants follow. But I think it's important to preface this by saying that the recruitment team at Unlocked are amazing and are here to kind of help you succeed. So at any stage of the process where you feel like you just want someone to kind of talk to, or you have any questions about the next stage, like the recruitment team are very much there to support that throughout the recruitment process. Um, to be eligible to apply for the Unlocked program, you'll need to have at least a C or above in GCSE English and English language and maths or equivalent, and to be expecting or have a 2-1 in any undergraduate degree, as well as to the right to work in the UK for the duration of the program. So those are kind of the things that are, I guess, some of the things you need to make sure you have before you apply. But it doesn't matter what degree you have, because we think it's really important that applicants are able to draw on their own skills that they get from their degree, their personal life, any volunteering experience or any paid roles that they can talk about throughout the application process. That really kind of beefs up any application you put through, being able to speak eloquently about your different experiences. After our applicants kind of register their details, they'll then do a textual judgment activity, which is basically like a situational judgment test. But I'm going to go on to that in a bit more detail shortly. That's then followed by a video interview, an assessment centre, and then a conditional offer. So the conditional offer is some of the more kind of vetting checks that are needed to work in prisons. But as I mentioned before, the recruitment team are very supportive throughout this process, so we're always kind of willing to answer any questions that you might have about the different stages. So let's talk about the kind of attributes that we look for. All of our applicants, regardless of kind of which background they're coming from, what skills they have, are assessed against the same set of 7 attributes. This is what we're looking for in our prison officers. This is what we think makes an amazing prison officer. As I said, what you'll be tested on during the application process as well, because we think that if you have the skills at the point of application, it means that you can kind of develop them on the program, because these are some of the skills that you'll need day to day in the role. So just to kind of run through them quite quickly, some of them will be a little bit kind of easier to kind of grasp than others in terms of like how they're used by other employers. But if we think first about motivation, so we want to know whether or not our applicants care about the mission and kind of if they're determined to make a difference in people's lives. Sense of possibility, which is actually one of my favorites, but it's about whether or not you have a positive outlook and whether you have the belief that people and systems can change, and your kind of commitment to seeing that. And then decision making, so quite, as it says on the tin, kind of thinking on your feet under pressure and being able to make good decisions. So leadership, and that's about kind of wanting to make sure that our applicants and participants are influential leaders, but also are kind of balanced, and they're able to balance authority with empathy in their role, because that's really important. And then relationship building. So whether or not our participants and ambassadors are able to establish strong and effective relationships with prisoners as well as the staff around them as well, which is really important to kind of make sure they're doing their job effectively. And then penultimately, resilience. So are they able to handle difficult situations? Can they kind of step back from something and acknowledge that it's difficult, but then move forward and kind of make it better? And then finally, so self-awareness. So are you able to reflect on your actions and behavior? And are you willing to kind of develop based on those reflections? Because I think once you're able to be self-aware, it means that all of your attributes and all of your characteristics can be improved because you have that ability to kind of step back. So as I speak about the different stages of the process, it is important to remember that this is literally what you're being assessed on. And for some of the different stages, doing some preparation around those attributes can actually really help kind of applicants feeling more confident throughout that process. So if we start with the textual judgment activity, it's essentially the first stage of the process after the registration stage. And it's quite similar across any other kind of graduate recruitment processes that you may or may not be included in at the moment. And it basically includes a set of scenarios which relate to the prison officer role, where you'll be expected to say what you would do in a situation. So I'm going to give you an example of a type of question. And if you kind of feel up to it, if you want to put any thoughts in the chat, I'm going to read you the question that will be accompanied with this answer, and then you can let me know what your thoughts are in terms of what you think you would do in that situation. So I'll play the video. Okay, so that is an example of what a question will look like. Or how a question will kind of show up as a cartoon, and all of the scenarios are essentially cartoons like that. So it really allows you to kind of get immersed in the process and really think about what you might do in those situations. So this is the question written out, and this is what it would look like on the page. You'd have the video above it and a question below. So your options are of kind of what you would do. So you would either tell the prisoner he has plenty of time and shut the cell door so he cannot speak to anyone, refuse the request and explain to the prisoner that you have to get everyone locked up in time. Or the last one, allow the prisoner to go and get the book on the condition that he's back in 1 minute. So if you feel up to it, feel free to kind of put in the chat box. So we could, let's just say A, B, or C, and then I'm going to run through what the correct answer is. But if not, it's fine. I'll run through anyway. Nice, thanks, Paul. Oh, let's wait if there's any others coming through. B, yeah. That is the correct answer. Well done. So yeah, you would refuse the request and explain to the prisoner that you have to get everyone locked up on time. So part of the reason for that is that you should explain your reasons, but also be clear on the expectations as well. So let them know that you can't do something, but why you can't do it. And that can help in terms of managing behavior, managing expectations and things like that. So well done. You got that one correct. So on this slide, I've got some kind of tips on how to, I guess, do well in a situational judgment test or a textual judgment activity. And I'm happy to kind of answer any follow-up questions about these as well. So the first is kind of finding a quiet space where you can complete the test and you won't be distracted. As I mentioned, the situational judgment test consists of videos. So you want to make sure that you're in a place where you can listen to, watch, and engage with the videos in a way that is helpful for yourself. Make sure that you take your time when you're doing the situational judgment test. It's not a timed activity. But I would recommend kind of being able to read through all of the different scenarios and also your options so that you can really take your time to make a decision. And I guess that kind of relates to the second one around like using the information that is in front of you. So try not to add any additional context because it might change your answer, but using all of the information in front of you will help you reach a decision. And then also don't be afraid to go with your intuition. So a lot of people often get caught up thinking about what they should do versus what they shouldn't do and like how many people that will impact and things like that. But if in doubt, go with what you think would be best, because essentially that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see how you would naturally react in those situations. Remember the attributes. So I did speak about, those 7 attributes that we're assessing throughout the whole recruitment process. It's really important that you consider those as you're going through the test, because usually if you can kind of identify 1 or 2 attributes you might be testing with that question, it will help guide you to an answer. But as I mentioned, in doubt, don't be if in doubt, don't be afraid to go with your intuition. Um, and then just thinking about all of the different options carefully, and all of the different people that have been kind of spoken about in that scenario, and thinking about how you might make sure that you're having the best impact in that situation. And then the last one, it might feel difficult at the time, but try to enjoy it. It's a really engaging stage of the recruitment process where you get your first chance to really see how you might fare in these situations. So it's as much a learning experience for you as a recruitment experience. So I'd suggest that you enjoy it and kind of learn from it, especially when it gives you the reason as to why your answer is correct. There's also a test answer on the website as well that you can kind of go through. I think there are 3 questions that you can kind of test and do a practice on beforehand. So we'd recommend doing that as well if you're a little bit nervous about that. And then video interview. So this is the next stage of the recruitment process. And it features a few different questions, about 6 questions, and there are a couple of different types of questions. So I'm just going to run through that first in terms of what types of questions you can expect. So they'll consist of 2 main types of questions. So that's competency-based questions and scenario-based questions. It can help in terms of your preparation and I guess your structure on the day to know what different types of questions look like and how to identify them, and how you can also use different tools to answer different types of questions as well. So by rule of thumb, competency-based questions ask you about an experience that you have. So that's why you'll notice that they say, explain a time when you did something, or what experience do you have of something, or tell us about a time when you did something. So it's talking about something you've done in the past. And it's important in those situations to use the STAR or CAR method. So that either stands for situation, task, action, result, or context, action, result. And it basically just gives you a really good structure of how to answer a question, both in a video interview and in a one-to-one interview as well. And then situational based questions are about how you might approach a situation. So quite similar to the situational judgment test, but it gives you more time to explain what you might do. So for that one, you would probably want to explain why you did something. So justify your decision. Think about the other options that you ran through in order to make a decision, but particularly focus on and kind of justify the decision that you actually made. So just to kind of give a bit of structure in terms of what the video interview actually looks like, it will be on a platform called Launchpad. You'll get the link in your in an email that invites you to the video interview. You'll get a chance to run through some tips and tricks before you actually do the video interview. So I'd make sure that you set aside around 30 to 45 minutes to actually do it, because it will give you a chance to run through those tips in detail. And then you'll have a chance to do a practice question, just so you can kind of get used to the platform, and that one isn't being assessed. And then when you actually go into your questions, the structure will be that your question will be asked to you in a video format. So one of our participants will pop up on the screen in a video and will ask you the question. It will also be written on the screen. And then you'll have about 60 seconds to prepare your answer. So that's when it's important to think about the structure of your answer and how you deliver it. And then you'll have between 60 seconds and 2 minutes to deliver your answer, depending on how complex the question is. So that's the kind of structure that all of the questions will follow. And earlier, you may remember me mentioning that it's important to kind of do some preparation beforehand. And for the video interview, I'd recommend thinking about our attributes that I spoke about before. So if you can have a think about experiences that you have that exhibit all of these attributes, it means that you go into the video interview with a bank of examples. So you won't have to scramble in your head for different examples. All you're doing in those 60 seconds is structuring your answer so that whatever example you've chosen comes across as clearly as possible. So I usually like to kind of suggest that applicants think about attributes beforehand, running through any possible questions. But it's also important that you actually answer the question that's being asked of you. So using those examples as I guess just as an example, something that's kind of going to guide your question, your answer, but thinking about how the way you structure your question will specifically answer the question that you're being asked for the video interview. And then on this slide, there are just some tips that I'll run through with you. So the first one, kind of imagining it's a real interview and that you're speaking with someone. So because it's a one-way video interview and there's no one on the other end, sometimes it can feel a little bit like you're talking to yourself, which I actually quite prefer because it means that you can take your time when you're saying things. You're not having to worry about, someone's body language changing as you're speaking to them or whether or not they're smiling or nodding. You're just focusing on whether or not you're saying the right thing at that time. And then thinking about the attributes, which is what I mentioned before, because that's what you're being assessed on. So getting a really good understanding of what they actually mean and how you can use your experience to speak to those. Speak to your career servers and see if they have any practice video interviews you can do beforehand. Because I think even though the questions won't be unlocked or prison officer specific, it will get you into the practice of being able to plan an answer before you deliver an answer, and a chance to potentially get some feedback as well. Um, if that isn't an option for you, you can also practice recording yourself as well. So like setting your phone or laptop or iPad up and answering a question that is relating to one of the attributes and watching yourself back. Like, did you speak clearly about that example? Is there anything you could do differently to make sure that you come across clearer? There are things that you can do on your own, and kind of you can ask for feedback from your friends as well if that's helpful. But it can just get you used to speaking to a camera. Testing your video on your laptop or device is really helpful. I would say try and use a laptop if possible, just because it means that your device won't shake because you won't have to hold it. But if you do have to use an iPad or a phone, try and make sure that it's set up somewhere so it doesn't move, so you're not having to hold it in your hands. That will just take a couple of worries off you, because you won't have to think about it falling or anything like that. Try and be in a quiet place if you can, with a clear background if you can as well. The video interviews are assessed by human beings, so if there's something that is like distracting or the angle of your camera is distracting, it can sometimes take away a little bit from what you're saying. So try and reduce that as much as you can, and make sure that you can be heard, that they can see you clearly, and that you don't have anything distracting or offensive in the background as well. And then using the star or car method, as I spoke about before. So this is really important, just to think about the structure of your answer, making sure that whatever you're trying to say is coming across in the clearest way possible as well. So that's the kind of the end of the presentation there. But I do have time for questions. So if anyone either wants to take themselves off mute or put any questions in the chat, I'd be happy to answer any questions now, whether about the application process or the program itself. I'll just leave that up there. That's our recruitment email address, just in case anyone else had any questions after the session.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Khadija. I really, really appreciate that. Some really, really good information. Do any of you guys have any questions that you'd like to add for Khadija to answer?
I think Madeline's typing.
Good.
As well, so we'll wait for this to come through.
There we are. That's good. Yeah, I thought it was very, very interesting. Yeah, especially the bit where the person did the scheme, but then found something to kind of progress through that using that experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, the situation judgment thing was good as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know like how, because one of the things we emphasize for our participants is like how they speak about their experience to make it like to kind of speak really impressively about what they've done, because it is such an impressive and intense role. But sometimes it's just about how you articulate it that makes it kind of applicable to other opportunities. So we're very much able to kind of support with that. So Paul's put a question about taking a year out. Would you still be able to apply the year after? Absolutely. So applications usually open in the autumn. They'll be open for the 2023 cohort come September time. So I just recommend having a look at our website during that time. And then if you have any questions, you can contact the recruitment team, and we'll be able to support with that. So Madeline asks, is the master's course exam based or assignment based? Good question. So it's both, but most of the exams and or kind of assessments done in person will be done during the summer institute. So you have time to kind of study during that time. And then once you're actually on the program, they'll mostly be assignment based. And one thing I didn't mention, which might be helpful, especially for you, Madeline, with the master's question, is that the teaching for the master's happens regionally. So participants don't go back to Leeds Trinity throughout the whole program, but they'll meet regionally, usually in very swanky offices, to do their kind of learning. So they'll have experts from the Leeds Trinity teaching team. They'll have people with lived experience of prison, previous participants, the Unlocked team. So it's very much a group effort to kind of deliver the bespoke master's degree. So hopefully that information helps there. I'm also just going to put something in the chat just so that you can find out a bit more information if you're interested. It's coming up in not a very legible color though, so let's change that color. Yeah, it's coming up in black, but we definitely don't want it that. Let's see if I can change it. Oh, yeah, it's not coming through. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to, in the chat, I've just put the recruitment email address where you can sign up for updates. So that might be helpful for you, Paul, if you want to know when we're opening applications next year. And then our apply link, so you can have a bit more information about the application process. And then also our frequently asked questions link as well, just in case you have any other questions after this and want to see if they're on the website. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's what sorry, I've just got one question, just kind of on the back of Paul's really, as he's looking to take a year out. Is there anything that Paul or anyone could possibly do during that year out to actually make them a little bit more employable for the Unlock program, like any particular experience or particular skills development that they should really focus on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends on what the applicant themselves or what the student wants to develop during that time. There's nothing that we say that we need from applicants in order for them to be successful. It's all about those attributes. But one of the things that I think a lot of people have said they found helpful was any work with vulnerable members of society, vulnerable groups, whether that be prisoners themselves or, you know, young people or, you know, any other group that kind of requires a bit more support in society. Working and volunteering in prisons over the last couple of years has been quite difficult. So there's been fewer people than usual saying that they've done kind of prison-based volunteering work. But anything that will allow you to kind of develop your skills working with vulnerable people would be helpful. But I think there's also something around being able to speak openly about the transferable skills that you learned, whatever you do on that year out, because a lot of the experiences we have will lend themselves really well to the attributes, but it's just about how to kind of speak about them in a way that lends themselves to the attributes essentially.
Thank you. No, that helps me when talking to students and grads about it. So yeah, no, thank you so much, Khadija. I really appreciate you doing the talk for us. I've recorded this session, so once that's done, I'll be able to upload that and send it to the people who were unfortunately unable to attend. But thank you so much for your time. I'll stop the recording now. But yeah, no, thank you.